Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present to you Dr. Mansoor Limba, an Associate Professor of Islamic Studies Department at Islamic University.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to all of you. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers, from Sir Harvey and Sir Sultan down to all of you, my fellow students, for letting me be part of this regular academic conversation. And I hope that this conversation will continue. In my recent lecture tour to different Mindanao universities and colleges on media reporting and peace journalism, this question was thrown to me not just once but twice during the open forum. Next. We know that you graduated from Iran. How do you differentiate its Islamic Republic from the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or what we call as ISIS? Before directly answering the question, I told the young audience, just like you, of course, tayo pala, that the stateness of the ISIS, meaning its being a state, is actually a misnomer from the post-Westphalian understanding of the term state, because it is a transnational group backed by some global and regional powers, and whose perceived territory is not just Iraq and Syria, but the entire globe, including our own Mindanao, which they considered the capital of what they called Wilayatul Mashriq, or Eastern Province. On the other hand, the Islamic Republic of Iran, I was telling them, is a founding member of the United Nations Organization and a long-time member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, or NPT, of which Mr. Trump's darling in the Middle East, I am referring to Israel, has never been a member. Unlike the self-proclaimed champion of democracy and defender of human rights in the world, Iran is a country which has never invaded another country for the past 250 years. Not an inch was added to its current territory. There was no such thing as invasion of Afghanistan, Iraq, and other countries. So this afternoon, don't expect me to give you a classroom lecture, just like Sir Harvey is usually doing to you. I would rather tell you the story of my answer to that single question. And to begin with, let me quote Surah Al-Hadid, chapter 57, verse 25 of the Quran. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Laqad arsalna rusulana bil bayyinati wa anzalna ma'ahumul kitaba wal mizana liyaquma an-nasu bil qist. I am not mesmerizing you, I am quoting from the original Arabic. Certainly, we sent our apostles with manifest proofs, and we sent down with them the book and the balance, so that mankind may maintain justice. Whenever there is a government, individual freedom tends to be curtailed by a powerful entity, which is the government apparatus. Therefore, there is a continuing tension between individual freedom on one hand and the government authority on the other. As such, one of the fundamental questions in political philosophy is what is the source of authority of the government, or what is the government's legitimacy of power. In one end of the spectrum, one may say, is monarchy in which sovereignty resides in the person of who eventually becomes the king or monarch. As they say, might is right. At the other end of the spectrum is liberal democracy, in which sovereignty emanates from the people themselves. Let us continue. In the Islamic political thought, however, God is seen as the sole legislator and lawgiver. Why? Because He is the all-knowing and the all-powerful. And since He is described as As-Samad, meaning the unique, He is neutral, walang bias, vis-a-vis any subject or object of the law. As such, He is the true source of authority, and the legitimacy of power emanates from Him. So, seen from this perspective and in the light of the Quranic passage quoted earlier, the divine prophets were sent with the book and the balance. وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ, to govern so that they may maintain justice, لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. So, sent with a family, a clan, a village, a community, or a nation. I am now explaining the role of the prophets in the Islamic teachings. The prophets were legitimate and bona fide prophets, whether the people believed them or not. Such was the case of Noah, Hud and Saleh, Zechariah, and Yahya. Yahya is what we know as John the Baptist or Juan Bautista. And other prophets who were rejected by the majority of their people. Zechariah was killed. John the Baptist was beheaded. So there was no large following. There was another group of prophets. Prophets who were able to effectively politically govern their own people. Belonging to this group were such prophets as Moses, David, and of course, his son Solomon, on whom be peace among others. At this juncture, the question is, what element did the latter group of prophets have, which the former group did not have? The first group was the group of prophets who were not able to have political authority, meaning they were not able to govern. The other group, the next group, was able to govern. Ano yung meron dito sa pangalawa na wala dito sa una? Was it legitimacy or mashru'iyah? Of course, our assumption was that all of them were bona fide and legitimate prophets of God, meaning they had the mission to establish the kingdom of God not only in heaven but also on earth. So, the missing element was actually makbuliyah or acceptance of the people. Meaning, whenever there is acceptance of the people, meaning an overwhelming majority of people, a government could be able to be established. Like in the time of Saul, David, and then Solomon. The missing element was actually, as I said, makbuliyah or acceptability of the people, which the latter group of prophets possessed but not by the former. In other words, from day one, the prophets were legitimate rulers or governors, but they need the people's acceptability so as to be able to establish a political rule or government. And along this spirit, I am now trying to navigate Islamic history in passing. Along this spirit, when Prophet Muhammad was still in Makkah, his birthplace, where the majority of people rejected him, no Islamic government could ever be imagined. It was only after the second Pact of Aqaba, in which the tribal leaders of Medina invited him to their city and swore allegiance to him to be their absolute leader, that the Medina Constitution was written and the Islamic government established. In other words, the Islamic city-state of Medina was not established just because the Prophet wanted it. It was the people who requested for it and recognized the Prophet as a leader. Otherwise, nothing could be done. Some 25 years after the Prophet's demise, Hazrat Ali, the fourth Caliph, assumed the office of Khilafah or Caliphate only after the unanimous insistence of the masses. In depicting the public unanimity, history tells us that if Hazrat Ali were standing, he could not be able to sit down. Bakit? Dinumog ng mga tao. And if he were sitting down, he could not be able to stand up due to the large number of people who threw themselves toward him. So simply put, Khilafah is a product of the legitimacy of imama and makbuliya or acceptability by the people. So at this point, we can already identify two essential elements of Islamic government which must go hand in hand. Klaro masyado, one is legitimacy and the other one is acceptability. Legitimacy alone is not enough. There must be the acceptability of the people. And acceptability of the people is not enough unless there is the founding legitimacy for it. So, what is now legitimacy and acceptability in the Islamic Republican system in Iran? Taking into account these two inseparable elements of Islamic government, when the epic-making Iranian nation recognized Ayatollah al-Udma, Sayyid Ruhollah al-Musawi al-Khomeini, better known as Imam Khomeini, as their marja o taqlid or religious authority and supreme leader, as you may observe, I am using terms so in order to familiarize you with those terms, because little by little these terms will come out in the news. Before, these terms were just in theological textbook. But now, makikita natin sa news items. That is their spiritual that is their spiritual as well as political guide. He did not arbitrarily impose his will concerning the form of government to be established. Although he could have done it. Why? Because he was a charismatic leader, the people would accept him. But he did not. He called for a referendum. So instead, he entrusted to the masses as to what form of government they wanted. And the 1979 referendum that was done for that purpose gave an outstanding result of 98.22% votes for the establishment of Islamic Republic as the form of government. Hence, the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran was ratified soon afterward. As a footnote, you can observe that 98.22, the remaining one, is very little compared to the religious minorities in Iran, meaning the Christians, the Jews, and the Zoroastrians. What does it mean? It means to say that even the non-Muslims voted for the Islamic Republic during that time. So, in summary, in the Islamic Republican system, the word Islamic represents the element of legitimacy or mashru'iyah, while the word republic symbolizes the element of acceptability or makbuliyah. And these two elements must go hand in hand like the two wings of a bird. So, in conclusion, in the world today, where the seclusion of the so-called ascetics serves as a moral carte blanche to the bullies, while the militant extremism of the so-called Puritans victimizes the innocents, reading the text of the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which combines religious legitimacy and people's acceptability, is a recipe for moderation and rationality. So I am now ready to entertain your questions. And bear in mind that in an academic venue such as this one, there is no such thing as irrelevant or silly question. What is irrelevant or silly is to say that a particular question is irrelevant or silly. I thank you.
Thank you, Sir Mansoor, for that very informative talk. At this juncture, we will be entertaining questions from the audience.